guys, hi, this is Sid Patel. We are live from USA Wine Ratings. We're at the 5th annual USA Wine Ratings. I have Susan Lin with me. She's a Master of Wine. Recently, just had her ceremony done last year in London, Susan. So thank you again for, it was great to meet you there. Thanks again for coming back. Yep, appreciate it. So we're going to chat about, this content is really about basic mythbusters around wine and just for the consumers out there in what they can play around with the wine subject, right? Susan, thanks for joining me again here. Why don't you give us a little background about your career and how you ended up in wine?
Gosh, well, wine started for me when I was very, very young because my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, always served some really good wine and cognac actually and brandies whenever he entertained at his house. And when I was very young, I got to see how he did this, and I was very curious as to, how this magic was being worked with getting people together. And then by the time the wine would come out, people would get even happier, and in a really wonderful way. And so that always stayed with me. That experience of entertainment, of hospitality, of bringing people together.
And that's what it made you interested in studying wine?
Absolutely, but it wasn't until I was far into my career in high tech. I was working in semiconductors and then I worked in software at Google, that I decided to actually start to find an academic framework through which to structure my studies.
Super.
Yeah.
Define Master of Wine for us. For the folks out there who don't know, Master of Wine is one of the highest accreditation you can get, for someone who's really in the business of wine. So I'll have Susan, elaborate that. So Susan, just for the people out there, what does Master of Wine mean?
Master of Wine is, I think, the closest thing there is to, if there was such a thing as a PhD in wine in general, it would be the closest thing. It's not a PhD, just to be clear, but it requires a knowledge, a depth and a breadth in all aspects of the wine industry, from viticulture, soil science, through the winemaking, the chemistry of that, through to supply chain logistics, bottling lines, through the business of wine and the trends of wine. For example, wellness is a huge, huge topic right now that has a lot to do with how our industry is affected and how consumers are enjoying wine and how that fits into their lifestyles, right, and their outlooks. And so it really is just, it's, by master we mean just encompassing everything. But of course, from my perspective, you can never be a true master of everything. The world is always changing. There's always so much to learn, and I am a student for life. So
super, thank you. So I think I have some notes, so I'll just go over that,
sure.
and just ask you a quick question. You can answer, whatever comes to your mind, right? So let's say, the first one is, what's the best way for a wine lover to learn about wine?
Get out there and explore, try different things. Whether you think you'll like them or not, you can always start with the ones that you think you'll like, because of course, it makes it easier, right? And don't ever let somebody tell you what you should like or what you shouldn't like.
Got it.
I think that's the most important, because each of us has our own threshold of enjoyment and exploration, and we don't need to make this hard or painful. True. Make it fun, make it part of your dining out experience. Make it a communal effort with your friends if you want to do something like that. Make it part of a pleasurable experience in the adventure of your life, and try different things. If you get to a point where you kind of have a feeling, okay, I kind of like the way this kind of wine tastes, and you start learning about it. Maybe read up a little bit about it so you can get what we call, more academically, the theory behind the tasting, right? So, because at least for me, and I think for many people, the more you understand what goes into the wine and what's behind the wine, the more you enjoy it. Because the more you also appreciate it.
Any books that come to mind? Just a couple, which are like, you recommend in all students or any new wine people to read or learn?
Gosh, there's lots of different options. Karen MacNeil's The Wine Bible. There's about to be a new edition coming out. You don't have to read it front to end. You can just sort of turn to a different page and learn something interesting.
Got it.
Different. So that's one way of doing it. If you want to really have like kind of an encyclopedia, I mean, the Jancis Robinson's.
All right. So that's more detailed.
That's more detailed, more academic, but it's something that's great to have as a resource.
Got it.
If you can flip to any page that's alphabetical, you can look through an index.
What's a good one for the table, coffee table? Let's say just in the house, just to keep it, for and just to chill with the coffee sometimes.
I'm trying to think about this. I know there are so many, it's escaping my mind right now, but there are such great options out there.
Sure.
And I know that there's a lot of great stories too written by people like, Victoria James being one of them, about the restaurant experience, just to get a sense of, what it's like working with wine in different ways. Because the ones that are coming to my mind are kind of the really academic ones that,
No worries, we'll chat on that. You can just message us and we'll add it in the comments.
Absolutely.
When tasting wine, right, what should one be looking for when they don't know the professional way of evaluating? What tips do you have for someone to just evaluate their own product?
Yeah. Well, what does it look like, first of all, in the glass? We really take things in visually first, right? So what does it look like? Is it bright? Is it, if it's white, is it clear all the way through, or do you see gold hints in the middle? Is it purple, or is it more ruby? Those sorts of things, or is it more orange? Those things can just sort of give you an idea and later help you connect a little bit maybe with how it smells and tastes later as you learn more about the particular styles of wine and grapes and how they're made. And then, what does it smell like? What kind of fruits are you getting if you're getting fruits? Or if it's something a little earthy, or even if it makes you think of things in your life that maybe somebody else might not understand. It's okay, if it's like, okay, well, that kind of reminds me of my grandma's garage, something like that.
I think it's going to be a big field, right? It's so many noses are there, so many smells, so many colors out there. But maybe there are 3 or 4 at least nose where you think that this is a bad wine. This has gone bad or something. Maybe give us a little hint on, like, if you're smelling this, it's bad. If you're looking at this kind of particles, it's bad.
Yeah. One of the telltale signs is like if for heat damage and other things is if it starts smelling like vinegar.
Got it.
It has that sharp smell, that kind of varnish smell.
Yep.
Yeah, that's something to look for. And you can trust your own instincts. We all have different thresholds.
True.
Another one, if it really smells like a wet cardboard, damp cardboard, oil-soaked cardboard, or sometimes your favorite dog has been out in the rain for a while. It comes back and it's great on the dog, maybe not so good on the wine.
Got it. Yeah.
Yes.
And what about the compositions or colors or any particles? Sometimes we see dew at the bottom of the glass, or even literally there are particles.
Yes.
It's a big myth. Like, I don't know if it's wine gone bad or it's just part of the oak and you just are okay to have it. Or even when we open a bottle, sometimes you just see when you're pouring a lot of cork particles.
Yeah. So it can really depend on what the substance is, but the two main things are kind of like that. Looks a little bit like maybe dirt or something like that. It's a sediment, right?
Okay.
So for a red wine, or maybe sometimes even a white wine, a wine that hasn't really been fined. Or actually, let me correct that, hasn't been filtered.
Got it.
We'll have grapes have substances in
and
it.
That's okay?
And that's okay. That's okay. But if you don't want to drink it, you can always decant it, carefully through, the bottle, and then you just, when the sediment starts to come out, you just kind of keep it back. But it won't hurt you. Some people even take for red wines like port, when there's like a nice sediment, they save it and they put it on like a crust for a tenderloin.
Got it.
And it can make a really nice roast. And they actually call it crusted port. It's actually really good.
Interesting. A couple of myths, which even I'm still not sure till date. One is what kind of wines you would want to put in the fridge. It can be personal, right? But maybe there are some basics like, okay, how we've heard in the industry, like, don't put Napa Cab in the fridge, for example. Don't put reds in the fridge, and maybe just put the white. I don't know, maybe correct us in there. And then second is, on decanting, right? Sometimes people decant a $15, even a yellow, let's say Jacob's Creek or Yellowtail, which doesn't require, because it's steel tank maybe. So just explore, tell us what needs to be decanted and what needs to be in the fridge.
Okay, so for the fridge, it's if you want it. The best one is if you need to, more in a pinch, right? You need to get the wine a little bit cooler, but you still have, several hours, right? So even like a nice crushable red, like, a Beaujolais Village, can be really nice, just a little chilled.
Okay.
Of course, sparkling wines and light white wines can go really well in the fridge if you want to have them nicely chilled, but maybe don't store them.
Got it. So just before serving, you advise?
Just before serving, maybe a day or two before, or just for short term. Because you don't also want it's colder in the fridge than in most wine storage, and so you don't want the cork to dry out.
Yeah.
That could cause issues with the wine later, especially if the temperature changes when you take it out and you want to serve it.
Got it.
So it's more good for the short term.
Understood.
If you want to
What is a good temperature you can advise for storage for whites and for storage for reds?
Yeah, I'd say about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. For good for reds for sure. Maybe just a little bit lower for whites, and just a little bit lower than that for sparkling. But honestly, it doesn't have to be that cold. The refrigerator really is quite cold, and so that's more of like a before you're going to serve, a day before, or short-term storage. I would say.
And on the decanter question,
decanting, yes. So some people think that decanting is just a really great experience. It makes that Jacob
and it looks
Creek.
Fancy, right?
It makes that Jacob Creek like immediate value is like 10x, right?
Yeah.
But for wines that really have had maturity on them, are maturable wines, more complex, have oak treatment.
And how do you usually know that? Like 5-year-old vintage at least, let's say?
Well, there's different ways, different reasons for decanting. Sometimes it's like a Napa Cab, it's big and robust, and it's younger, and so you want it to hit oxygen first. So there's the way I kind of splash it around in the decanter, because then that gets the wine really in contact with oxygen, because the fruit flavors are going to, when they hit oxygen, those are the ones that are going to come off more, and you want that fruit in that wine to balance the body, the tannins, et cetera, right? So that's the other thing. If you serve a wine too chilled, you won't get those flavors either. They get a little bit muted. So,
basically, you're advising if it's barrels, then it's fine to decant. But if it's stainless tanks, you still can decant?
You still can. And sometimes it's interesting because especially if it's with a screw cap, like a lot of great quality wines from New Zealand and Australia, even in California and other places, they've been kind of sealed really tightly, and so that fruit needs a little bit of time to get out. And put it in a decanter, and it'll come out a little bit more.
And just on that, how much time, like how you explained us the fridge thing, in this as well, like about 30 minutes before pouring or 2 hours before pouring? What's
Depends on the wine. Like if you have something really, really concentrated, like say Sina Qua Non from Santa Barbara, right? Really, really inky, really thick wines. You could decant that the day before. Seriously, like decant it. Pour it back in the bottle, and then keep it in the bottle. You can leave it sitting up there unopened, and I've done that. And like 3 days later, the wine keeps improving. But for wines that are much more delicate, say if it's like a more mature Burgundy, like Grand Cru white Burgundy, like Montrachet, you want it to maybe you don't even need to decant that. But if it's younger, you can. And let that fruit come out a little bit more and get into balance and get it in the glass, because it's not going to breathe as much in the decanter as in the glass.
Understood.
So robust red wines, especially young ones. And if it's really old, like I was saying, that has the sediment in it, you don't have to decant, because you don't want that fruit to dissipate too quickly. The fruit is going to be a little bit more recessed, and the moment it hits oxygen, it's going to dissipate more quickly. So you could just do it for the sediment if you don't want the sediment. Sometimes I won't even decant at all. There's no one size fits all. It really depends. And then once you know your own tastes as well, that will help along with the research that you do to make your decision.
Super. I think just a couple more on experiences and what you would pour at home, right? I mean, for example, if I was invited at your house and there is this gathering, I'm sure I would trust your judgment because you're like an expert, this occasion, this pairing, all this goes, right? So just give us 5-6 ideas on, let's say, if there is a brunch party, what you would pour. If there is a nice, steak and dinner, intimate, like, let's say 6 friends having a nice meal on a table, what would you serve? And if there is afterwards, just after drinks, coffee and dessert, your friends, what would you serve? So just walk us through 5-6 cases and suggestions.
Well, if you're going to have a gathering, I always believe that great sparkling wine is a wonderful way to welcome your guests and to make yourself feel like you're really trying to get the party started, right? Because as the host, even, you spend so much time getting things together, you've been working hard, and once you open that bottle of wine, the party's going and you are part of it. Yes, and having that and a little bit of cheese, a little bit of crackers. I always have at least 6 types of cheese in my refrigerator and at least 3 bottles of different sparkling at all times, because you never know who's going to come over and you want to treat them well, right? Nice. So, and then going into that, maybe like depending what you're going to have, like for the first course or for a lighter meal, you can have a lighter white, like maybe an oat. white wine, a little bit more tart, a little bit more zesty, and then like a fuller bodied white wine with a little more creaminess, more lees stirring, a little bit more oak on it perhaps, if you want to go that style. And then moving in like steak dinner or like pork tenderloin, things like that. You could have a good red wine that's a little bit lighter, that can suit the lightest dish that you have there. Perhaps
but it's okay to, let's say, start with the sparkling, have a second glass of white, and then a red. It's okay to go like that?
Absolutely.
Or
yeah.
you just want to stick with the reds then?
It depends on
Or
how.
it's a myth.
Yeah, I think if you have the aperitif and then you have the appetizer and then you have like a meat course, then you can go into the red. Then, and it's always good to have two different choices of red in case somebody doesn't really like sparkling or white.
So
they have a light
another
light
question,
red.
Susan,
Yeah.
is if I have a glass of sparkling, a white wine, a red wine, and maybe an ice wine, will it give me a headache, or should I stick to just one product that I've opened up?
I think it's always great to have options, especially since your guests might have different.
But if you mix
these.
it yourself,
But it will be all right. The key is to pace yourself.
Okay.
The key is to pace yourself. Make sure you're drinking water alongside and
Why do you
taking
get
bites
headaches
of food.
sometimes, from wines? Like I've heard that.
Well, it is alcohol.
Okay.
And that will happen if you drink more alcohol,
Yeah.
more than you're drinking water or having food in the
Yeah.
meantime. It can kind of hit your bloodstream a little. It'll be absorbed by your bloodstream
Got it.
just a little bit more quickly, because when you have water or food
Yep.
to go with it, that will slow it down. So it will just kind of it helps you pace yourself. So I think at a party too, you want to talk with people, you want to take a sip, you want
Yep.
to have a little conversation, eat a bite of food, take a sip of water, and that will carry you beautifully through the evening. But that said, always trust yourself and trust your body and how you're feeling. Don't ever feel like you need to drink more because other people are. You can just be very polite about it and just, say, I'm good, and have a little bit more water, or you can ask for, if there's any more of the white wine, if you preferred that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that's why I always like to have lots of varieties, because if somebody doesn't like white, they prefer red, they can have a light red or a more robust red. I know people who really only like robust reds, right? So everybody has their own threshold.
And for literally your basic friends that are coming to your house, which are like, let's say, not a wine drinker, what couple of questions do you ask them so that you can pour them the right drink?
First of all, do they drink at all?
Yeah.
And what kinds of wines they've ever had and what they liked,
Okay.
what they remembered they liked.
Got it.
And, that's pretty much the main thing. And sometimes, people don't really have the language. They're
Yep.
not sure. They're not used to talking about wine, and that's
True,
fine.
yeah.
It's not always the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so what I try to do is I try to listen between the lines.
Yeah.
I do this with customers as well, too.
Yeah.
Try to see, like, what is it that they're really trying to say? And then I'll test a few different things. So maybe I'll ask a few more questions. And then when I have a better idea, I'll just say, try this. If you don't like it, it's all good.
Yep.
But I'm really curious to see I think you'll like it, but let's see,
Super.
Yeah.
Anything else you have for them as a tips?
Really, always just try to enjoy yourself. It's not about being the smartest person in the room or knowing all that matters is get to know what you like
Super.
and share and keep trying, keep exploring. Makes life interesting.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Susan. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
So,
Sid.
guys, I think you've heard some great tips from Master of Wine, which I'm going to listen to this podcast for sure myself. If you are out there in the market, we at USA Wine Ratings really evaluate products by quality, value, and package. So look out for these brands as well. If you're hosting it at home, these are some great wines. Which will be doing justice to you because it's rated on the price as well. So thanks again, guys.